In April 2026, an oil company and a software company signed a deal. Chevron will build a natural gas facility. Microsoft will plug a data center into it directly. No public grid, no local utility, no neighbors. Your first reaction might be, interesting business story, not world-changing. You'd be wrong. Because this single deal is the clearest signal yet of how the physical layer of AI is being rebuilt, and who's getting left off the grid, literally in the process. A single hyperscale AI data center now pulls between 100 and 300 megawatts of continuous power. That's the electricity of a small city, and there are hundreds of these being built. This is the story of a shift called Bring Your Own Power, BIOP. And it might be the single most consequential change in energy politics of the decade. Here's why it matters. Historically, even the biggest corporations had to plug into the same grid as everyone else. That meant sharing costs, sharing constraints, sharing accountability. The grid was, for all its flaws, a commons. The BYOP model breaks that. Hyperscalers are now building dedicated generation, natural gas, sometimes nuclear, sometimes renewable, co-located with their data centers. They bypass the public grid entirely. The question we're answering in this episode: what happens to a country's energy future when its biggest electricity consumers opt out of the public grid? Because that's exactly what's happening, right now, in real time. Start with a number that should alarm you. In the United States, getting a new industrial load connected to the grid now takes 7 years or more. 7 years. That's longer than a presidential term. Longer than most AI models stay relevant. Longer than the product cycles of every company trying to build. The reason is simple. The American grid was designed for slow, predictable growth. It was never built to absorb dozens of small city-sized loads suddenly appearing in the same decade. Transformers, transmission lines, substations, all of it takes years to permit and build. And hyperscalers don't have years, they have quarters. Their competitors are moving. Their capex is committed. So they do what any industrial actor with enough money does. They go around the problem. Here's what an energy island looks like. A hyperscaler picks a site, usually somewhere with permissive zoning, water access, and a willing state government. They contract directly with an energy provider. Chevron in Texas, a nuclear operator in Pennsylvania, a gas turbine manufacturer anywhere with a pipeline. The power plant and the data center share a fence line. Electricity flows from one to the other without ever touching the public grid. It's legal, it's fast, it's efficient, and from the hyperscaler's perspective, it solves everything. From everyone else's perspective, it creates a problem the system has no language for yet. Here's the part that should make every ratepayer in a hyperscaler region pay attention. Grid infrastructure is expensive. Transmission lines, substations, maintenance crews, grid modernization, all of it is paid for by rates. Those rates are charged to everyone who uses the grid, including the biggest industrial users. When the biggest users go off-grid, they stop paying those shared costs. But the shared costs don't disappear. They get redistributed onto households, small businesses, schools, hospitals. In some parts of Virginia and Ohio, residential electricity costs are already climbing visibly, and analysts are tracing it straight back to data center clusters. You're now paying, on your monthly bill, for infrastructure that increasingly serves someone else. Some places have already hit the wall. Dublin, Ireland, has implemented a de facto moratorium on new data center grid connections. Northern Virginia, the world's densest data center hub, is power constrained. Phoenix, Tokyo, Mumbai, London, all saturated. And here's where it gets interesting. Because when those places say no more, the capital doesn't disappear. It just moves to wherever the permitting is fastest and the politics are most accommodating. which means the next wave of AI concentration is being selected by which governments are willing to cut deals. That's a power shift happening silently. A map of future AI dominance is being drawn by grid paperwork. Now, there's a fair counter-argument, and I want to give it to you straight. The Information Technology and Innovation Foundation argued in April 2026 that grid panic is being overstated. Their evidence: roughly a third of announced data center construction never actually gets built. Deals underway dropped more than 40% in the last quarter of 2025. OpenAI's $500 billion Stargate project stalled. Fair enough. The build-out isn't as big as the press releases suggested. But, and this is the critical point, even a smaller build-out is still a concentrated build-out. The capacity that does get built clusters in the same narrow handful of jurisdictions. A slower concentration is still concentration. So when you connect the Chevron-Microsoft deal to the 7-year grid queue, the rising residential rates, and the moratoriums in places like Dublin, one picture clicks into focus. The grid is no longer a shared public infrastructure. It's becoming a two-tier system. Tier 1, hyperscalers with private generation, predictable power, and strategic independence. Tier 2, everyone else, absorbing the rising costs and shrinking reliability of a grid they no longer own in any meaningful sense. Here's the signpost to watch. Track how many BYOP deals get signed in the next 12 months. If that number accelerates, and every indication says it will, the energy politics of AI are being decided before most governments even realize a decision is being made. And once the concrete is poured, you don't get to reconsider. The sting. For a century, access to electricity was one of the most powerful equalizers in modern life. It was the thing that let a rural school run computers, let a rural clinic run refrigerators, let a rural factory compete with an urban one. What we're watching now is that equalizer quietly unmaking itself, not because the power is running out, but because the people who need it most have been outbid by the people who can afford to build their own. If you had to choose, would you rather your country build public AI infrastructure on the public grid, or let the market sort it out? Drop your answer. I want to hear it. Next episode, we zoom out from the grid to the machines themselves. 86% of the world's supercomputers live in rich countries, 97% of the power. How did that happen? And who can still catch up?